Late August 1666. London is hot, crowded, and built almost entirely of wood. In less than a week, most of it will be ash. But right now, at dawn on London Bridge, nobody knows that. The city wakes up the way it always does. Cartwheels clatter over timber planks. A wherry pilot shouts for passengers. Smoke from 1,000 coal fires rises into the grey morning air. The bridge is packed with houses, 3 and 4 stories tall, leaning over the water. Shops are already opening their shutters. A baker's apprentice carries a tray of penny loaves toward Cheapside. A water carrier fills his buckets from the Thames below. It's been a brutal summer, hot, dry. Last year's plague killed maybe 100,000 people. The city is still recovering, still burying the dead, still trying to get back to normal. Today feels normal. It won't last. Quick context. This is London in 1666. 400,000 people crammed into a medieval maze of narrow streets and timber buildings. The old Roman walls still stand in places. Church spires poke above the roof line. The Thames cuts through it all. The only real highway in a city built for donkeys, not carriages. 3 things matter if you live here. First, survival. The plague just ended, but fire and disease are constant threats in a city this packed. Second, work. Most trades are controlled by guilds. If you're not in one, you can't sell. Third, staying out of trouble. There's no police force. Crime is everywhere. Punishment is public and brutal. Today we're following a route from dawn to dark. 6 stops across the city. London Bridge to Cheapside. The new coffeehouses to the Thames wharves. A weaver's workshop to the streets at nightfall. A normal day in a city that has no idea what's coming. The Great Fire starts in 6 days. For now, London goes about its business. Stop 1. London Bridge at dawn, early morning, 6 a.m. The only way across the river on foot. London Bridge is more than a crossing. It's a street, a neighbourhood, a bottleneck. Houses and shops line both sides. The roadway between them is barely wide enough for 2 carts. Pedestrians squeeze past, shoulder to shoulder. At the southern end, on gatehouse spikes, the heads of executed traitors stare down at the morning crowd. Reminder of what happens when you cross the Crown. Wherries cluster below, ferrymen calling out destinations. A penny to cross. Faster than the bridge if you're heading downriver. A water carrier named John hauls buckets up the stone steps, 2 at a time. He'll sell them door to door. No running water in this city. Every drop is carried by hand or piped from public conduits. Pickpockets work the crowd. Easy marks in the crush. A woman clutches her purse tighter as a boy brushes past. Church bells ring the hour. 6 bells, 6 churches. Slightly out of sync. Time to push into the city proper. Stop 2. Cheapside Market. Mid-morning, 9 a.m. London's main shopping street. Cheapside runs east-west through the heart of the city. Every kind of shop you can imagine. Goldsmiths, drapers, haberdashers, grocers. Timber-framed buildings lean out over the street, their upper floors nearly touching. The lane below is dark even at midday. Guild rules are strict here. Only licensed bakers can sell bread. Only approved butchers can sell meat. Break the monopoly and you'll answer to the alderman. Fines, maybe worse. Fire buckets hang outside every shop. Required by law, though nobody's sure they'd do much good if flames ever took hold. In this heat, with everything timber and thatch, one spark could be catastrophic. A baker hawks penny loaves from his stall. His apprentice watches the coal oven inside, nervous. The fire's been burning since before dawn. Bread for the whole street. In weather this dry, every flame feels dangerous. A woman buys a loaf and a cup of small beer. Breakfast for a penny. Safe to drink. Water from the conduits can kill you. The smell of coffee drifts from a nearby lane. Something new. Time to see what the fuss is about. Stop 3. A coffee house. Late morning, 11 a.m. 10 years ago, London had no coffee houses. Now there are dozens. This one's packed. Merchants, tradesmen, a few gentlemen. Anyone can enter for a penny. The coffee's bitter and strong. The conversation's what you're really paying for. News sheets are pinned to the walls. The London Gazette, government approved. Rumours circulate faster than print. Someone says a Dutch fleet was spotted off the coast. Someone else says it's nonsense. The Second Anglo-Dutch War drags on. Nobody's winning. The authorities don't love these places. Too much talk. Too much mixing of classes. Too much criticism of the Crown. They'd shut them down if they could, but coffee houses are profitable. Tax revenue speaks louder than politics. A merchant unfolds a letter from Amsterdam. Bad news for his wool shipment. He curses the war. His neighbour shrugs. At least we're not dead of plague. True enough, last year was worse. This year is. Just anxious. Time to head down to the river. Business doesn't wait. Stop 4. Thames wharves. Midday, 1 p.m. The river is London's lifeline. Everything arrives by water. Coal from Newcastle keeps the city warm. Timber from the Baltic builds the houses. Fish from downriver feeds the markets. Cranes swing cargo from ships to shore. The wharf smells like tar, fish and sewage. The Thames at low tide is half river, half mud. Stevedores haul crates. A merchant checks his ledger, counting barrels of wine. Press gangs prowl the docks. The Navy needs men. Volunteers are scarce, so they take who they can. Stay visible, stay sober, and hope they pick someone else. Ironically, a barge unloads timber. Oak planks, destined for a new warehouse. In a week, half these wharves will burn. The timber with them. A boy steals an apple from a crate. The merchant doesn't notice. Small crimes go unpunished here. Too much chaos, not enough law. The heat is brutal. The sun reflects off the water. Time to retreat inland, into the shade of the craftsman's quarters. If you're enjoying this reconstruction and want to support the channel, a like or subscription helps more than you'd think. No pressure, just grateful you're here. Now, back to 1666. Stop 5. A weaver's workshop. Afternoon, 4 p.m. A narrow street east of the old city walls. Timber-framed houses press close. Workshops on the ground floor, families living above. The clack of looms echoes from open doorways. Inside one workshop, 3 apprentices work under a master weaver. This is how trade works in London. Learn for 7 years. Maybe become a journeyman. Maybe, if you're lucky, a master yourself. The hierarchy is rigid. The master eats first, sleeps in the best room, controls the money. The apprentices sleep in the attic, work from dawn to dusk, and hope they don't get beaten for mistakes. If fire breaks out here, there's nowhere to go. Houses are packed timber to timber. No fire brigade. Just buckets passed, hand to. Hand from the parish well. In a drought like this, even that won't help much. The master sends a boy to fetch water from the public conduit 3 streets away. The boy grumbles. Everyone's complaining about the drought. Wells are running low. The city's tinder dry. Evening's coming. Time to head home before dark. Stop 6. Streets at nightfall. Evening night, 8 p.m. No street lighting. When the sun goes down, London goes dark. A few households hang lanterns outside their doors, required by law on moonless nights, though enforcement is spotty. Most streets are pitch black. Shutters close. Doors bar from the inside. Watchmen patrol with staffs and lanterns, calling the hour. They're mostly old men. Not much use against real crime, but they make noise. That's something. Curfew isn't strictly enforced, but nobody wants to be out after dark. Robbery, violence, easy to disappear in a city with no police. A family in Pudding Lane, just north of London Bridge, banks their coal fire for the night. The oven cools slowly. The timber walls are warm to the touch. Across the city, thousands of fires burn low. Thousands of wooden houses. Thousands of families settling in for another hot night. A watchman calls 9 o'clock. All's well, for now. We know this day through fragments. Samuel Pepys keeps a diary. He's living in London right now, writing down everything. John Evelyn, another diarist, records the city's rhythms. Court records, guild archives, parish registers. Pre-fire surveys that mapped the streets before they burned. We've used AI-generated visuals to reconstruct what these written sources describe. Carefully. No anachronisms, no inventions, just attempts to show what a timber city looked like before it became ash. Gaps remain. We don't know exactly what that last week felt like. The anxiety, the heat, the sense that something was wrong. But we can get close. Close enough to understand what was lost. Night falls on London, late August 1666. The city settles into uneasy sleep. Hot, crowded, still grieving last year's dead, still fighting a war at sea, still trying to rebuild what the plague destroyed. Nobody knows that in 6 days, a fire will start in a bakery on Pudding Lane. Nobody knows it will burn for 3 days, consuming 13,000 houses, 87 churches, and most of the medieval city. Nobody knows that the London they're falling asleep in tonight will be gone by the end of next week. The same wooden city that woke up this morning, the bridge, the market, the wharves, the workshops, will be ash. Next time, a day in London, 1666, the Great Fire, 3 days that changed London. For now, in late August 1666, London still stands. In a few days, it won't.